Tonight, we begin with a question that has haunted humanity since the earliest days of consciousness itself. What would happen if a person simply never slept again? Not for a night, not for a week, but truly never. It's a thought that whispers through our minds in those quiet moments before we drift away each evening, a curiosity born from our most fundamental biological rhythm. Sleep is perhaps the strangest thing we do. Every day, without fail, our bodies demand that we surrender consciousness for hours at a time. We close our eyes, become vulnerable, and trust in a process we barely understand. Yet this nightly ritual is so essential that every creature on Earth, from the tiniest insects to the largest whales, engages in some form of rest and recovery. But what if that rhythm stopped? What if the gentle pull towards sleep simply vanished, leaving us awake in an endless waking world? To understand what happens when we never sleep, we must first understand what sleep actually does for us. Sleep is not simply the absence of wakefulness. It is an active, intricate biological process that orchestrates the repair, restoration, and reorganization of every system in our body. During those peaceful hours of rest, our brains wash away toxins, our immune systems strengthen their defenses, and our memories transform from fragile electrical patterns into permanent neurological pathways. The human sleep cycle operates in roughly 90-minute waves, moving through distinct stages that each serve specific purposes. In the lighter stages of non-REM sleep, our heart rate slows, our body temperature drops, and our muscles begin to relax. As we descend deeper, our brain waves slow into the delta rhythms that characterize the most restorative phase of sleep. Finally, we enter REM sleep, where our eyes dart beneath closed lids as our minds process the day's experiences through dreams. This entire cycle repeats 4 to 6 times each night, creating a symphony of biological restoration that has evolved over millions of years. Our circadian rhythm, that internal clock that responds to light and darkness, carefully orchestrates this process with the precision of the most sophisticated timepiece. Without sleep, this delicate machinery begins to break down in ways that are both predictable and profound. The first 24 hours without sleep might seem manageable. Many of us have experienced this during college finals, demanding work projects, or caring for a newborn. Initially, the body compensates remarkably well. Stress hormones like cortisol surge to maintain alertness, while the brain works harder to process information and maintain focus. But even in these first hours, subtle changes begin. Reaction times slow by fractions of seconds. The ability to switch between tasks becomes more difficult. Most notably, the brain begins to experience what researchers call microsleeps, brief episodes lasting just a few seconds, where consciousness flickers like a candle in the wind. These microsleeps are the brain's desperate attempt to steal moments of restoration. During these tiny lapses, brainwaves shift into sleep patterns, even while the eyes remain open. The person experiencing microsleep is completely unaware it's happening, which makes activities like driving extraordinarily dangerous. A 1-second microsleep while driving at 60 miles per hour means traveling 88 feet with no conscious awareness. As the first day stretches into the second, the effects compound. The prefrontal cortex, that sophisticated region of the brain responsible for decision-making and impulse control, begins to struggle. Simple mathematical problems become challenging. The ability to form new memories starts to falter as the hippocampus, deprived of the consolidation that occurs during sleep, fails to transfer information from short-term to long-term storage. Emotionally, the sleep-deprived brain becomes increasingly unstable. The amygdala, our brain's alarm system, becomes hyperactive while losing its normal regulatory connection with the prefrontal cortex. This creates a perfect storm of heightened emotional reactivity with diminished emotional control. Small frustrations feel overwhelming. social interactions become more difficult to navigate. The person may laugh inappropriately or become irritated by minor inconveniences that would normally be easily managed. By the 48-hour mark, the body's systems are under significant stress. The immune system, which relies heavily on sleep for the production of infection-fighting cells and antibodies, begins to weaken. White blood cell production decreases, leaving the body more vulnerable to even minor infections. The inflammatory response becomes dysregulated, creating a state of chronic low-level inflammation throughout the body. Metabolism also begins to shift in concerning ways. The hormones that regulate hunger, ghrelin and leptin, become imbalanced. Ghrelin, which signals hunger, increases while leptin, which signals fullness, decreases. This creates intense food cravings, particularly for high-calorie, high-carbohydrate foods. The body, sensing stress, begins preparing for what it perceives as a crisis by trying to store energy. Sleep deprivation also disrupts insulin sensitivity, making it more difficult for cells to absorb glucose from the bloodstream. This can lead to elevated blood sugar levels and increased risk of developing diabetes, even in otherwise healthy individuals. As we move beyond the second day without sleep, around the 72-hour mark, more dramatic changes begin to emerge. The hallucinations that many associate with extreme sleep deprivation typically begin around this time, though they can start earlier in some individuals. These hallucinations are not random occurrences, but represent the brain's desperate attempt to achieve the processing that normally occurs during REM sleep. Doctors have observed that the timing and nature of these hallucinations often follow roughly 90-minute cycles, mirroring the natural rhythm of REM sleep. It's as if the brain is trying to dream while awake, creating a surreal blend of reality and dreamlike experiences. The hallucinations typically begin as simple visual distortions. Shadows might seem to move, text on a computer screen might appear to dance or change, or peripheral vision might detect movement that isn't there. As sleep deprivation continues, these experiences become more complex and realistic. One documented case describes a person seeing giggling dancing pixies and elves in place of text on a computer screen. Another individual reported seeing elaborate scenes playing out in reflective surfaces. These experiences feel completely real to the sleep-deprived person, making it increasingly difficult to distinguish between actual sensory input and the brain's attempts to process information through its disrupted systems. Auditory hallucinations may also develop. People might hear voices, music, or sounds that aren't there. The brain's auditory processing centers, deprived of the restoration that occurs during sleep, begin to misinterpret neural signals as external sounds. By the end of the first week without sleep, if such a thing were possible, the human body would be in a state of profound physiological crisis. The cardiovascular system would be under enormous strain. Blood pressure, which normally drops during sleep to give the heart and blood vessels a chance to rest and repair, would remain elevated. This constant stress on the cardiovascular system increases the risk of heart attack, stroke, and other serious complications. The brain itself would be showing signs of significant dysfunction. The glymphatic system, which operates primarily during sleep to clear toxic waste products from brain tissue, would be completely overwhelmed. Proteins associated with neurodegenerative diseases would begin accumulating in dangerous concentrations. The blood-brain barrier, which normally protects the brain from harmful substances, might become compromised. Temperature regulation, controlled by the hypothalamus, would become increasingly erratic. The body might swing between feeling extremely hot and cold, unable to maintain the precise temperature control that healthy brain function requires. Sweating patterns would become irregular, and the normal daily fluctuations in body temperature would be completely disrupted. The autonomic nervous system, which controls all the automatic functions we never think about like breathing, heart rate, and digestion, would begin to malfunction. Heart rate would become irregular, blood pressure would fluctuate wildly, and basic reflexes would become unpredictable. Memory formation would be severely impaired, not just for new information, but potentially creating false memories that seem completely real. The sleep-deprived brain, desperate to make sense of incomplete information, might fill in gaps with fabricated details that become indistinguishable from actual memories. Perhaps most concerning, the ability to make rational decisions would be almost completely compromised. The prefrontal cortex, already struggling after just a day or two without sleep, would be barely functional. This could lead to dangerous choices, poor judgment, and behavior that seems completely out of character. The individual would likely experience episodes that resemble psychosis, with paranoid thoughts, disorganized thinking, and an inability to communicate effectively with others. Speech might become slurred or nonsensical. The ability to understand what others are saying could be severely impaired. All of these changes would be occurring while the person remained technically awake, creating a nightmarish state between consciousness and unconsciousness, where the brain is neither fully awake nor able to achieve the restoration that sleep provides. But these are not just theoretical possibilities. Medical science has documented cases that show us exactly what happens when sleep truly becomes impossible, providing us with sobering insights into just how essential this nightly ritual really is. In the quiet corners of medical literature, there exists a rare and deeply troubling condition that offers us perhaps the clearest window into what happens when sleep becomes impossible. Fatal familial insomnia is a genetic disorder so uncommon that fewer than 100 families worldwide carry the mutation responsible for it. Yet this condition provides us with the most complete understanding of what occurs when the human brain loses its ability to sleep entirely. Those born with this genetic variant live normal lives for decades, unaware of what lies dormant in their DNA. Then, typically in middle age, something shifts. Sleep becomes elusive, then difficult, then impossible. What follows is a predictable, tragic progression that unfolds over months rather than years, offering medical researchers a natural experiment in complete sleep deprivation. The condition progresses through distinct stages, each more severe than the last. In the beginning, sleep becomes fragmented and unsatisfying. Patients report feeling tired but unable to achieve deep, restorative rest. Vivid dreams may occur during the brief moments of light sleep they can still achieve. As weeks pass, even these shallow periods of rest disappear entirely. By the second stage, lasting several months, profound changes begin to emerge. The autonomic nervous system, which controls all those automatic functions we never think about, starts to malfunction. Heart rate becomes irregular and elevated. Blood pressure rises and fluctuates unpredictably. Body temperature regulation becomes erratic, leading to episodes of profuse sweating, followed by periods of feeling intensely cold. The patients develop what doctors call dysautonomia, a breakdown of the systems that keep our bodies running smoothly without conscious thought. Breathing patterns become irregular. Digestion becomes impaired. The pupils of the eyes may become abnormally small, a condition called meiosis. Some patients experience sudden onset of menopause or sexual dysfunction as their hormonal systems become increasingly disrupted. During the third stage, psychological symptoms intensify dramatically. Anxiety and panic attacks become common. Memory problems emerge, starting with difficulty forming new memories and progressing to problems accessing older ones. The patients may become confused about time and place. Paranoid thoughts and hallucinations begin to appear with increasing frequency and intensity. The hallucinations that develop during this stage are particularly interesting to researchers. They often follow patterns similar to REM sleep cycles, occurring roughly every 90 minutes. This suggests that the brain is desperately attempting to achieve the mental processing that normally occurs during dream sleep, but doing so while the person remains awake creates a nightmarish blend of reality and dreamlike experiences. In the final stage, which can last up to 6 months, the breakdown becomes complete. The inability to sleep leads to severe dementia-like symptoms. Speech becomes difficult or impossible. The patients may slip into a coma-like state, though brain activity shows they are not truly unconscious. Eventually, death occurs, typically between 6 months and 3 years from the onset of symptoms. What makes fatal familial insomnia so valuable to sleep researchers is that it demonstrates conclusively that sleep is not optional for human survival. Unlike voluntary sleep deprivation experiments where participants eventually succumb to microsleeps or can choose to end the experiment, these patients truly cannot sleep. Their brains have lost the fundamental ability to enter the restorative states that keep us alive and healthy. The condition affects a specific region of the brain called the thalamus, which acts as a relay station for sensory information and plays a crucial role in sleep regulation. When this area degenerates, as it does in fatal familial insomnia, the brain loses its ability to transition into sleep states. The result is a gradual but inexorable breakdown of every system in the body that depends on sleep for maintenance and repair. This tragic condition illuminates why the human brain simply cannot function indefinitely without sleep. While healthy individuals might survive days or even weeks of sleep deprivation through sheer will and the brain's emergency compensation mechanisms, fatal familial insomnia shows us that without the ability to sleep, the human body will eventually shut down completely. The patients with this condition often maintain some awareness of what is happening to them, which adds a particularly heartbreaking dimension to their experience. They understand that they are losing the ability to sleep, and they can observe their own cognitive and physical decline. Yet there is nothing they can do to restore their brain's capacity for sleep once the degenerative process begins. Medical researchers have tried numerous interventions to help these patients achieve sleep. Powerful sedatives, sleep medications, and even experimental treatments have been attempted, but none can restore the brain's fundamental architecture for sleep once it has been damaged. The thalamus, once compromised, cannot be repaired with current medical knowledge. This brings us to a crucial understanding about sleep deprivation in healthy individuals. While someone might voluntarily stay awake for days or even weeks, their brain retains the fundamental capacity to sleep. The microsleeps that occur during extreme sleep deprivation, the eventual collapse into unconsciousness, even the hallucinations and cognitive breakdown, all represent the brain's desperate attempts to achieve some form of rest and restoration. In contrast, those with fatal familial insomnia have lost this capacity entirely. Their brains can no longer access the neural pathways necessary for sleep, making their condition both unique and ultimately fatal. This distinction helps us understand why even extreme voluntary sleep deprivation, while dangerous, does not typically result in death. The healthy brain will eventually find ways to steal moments of rest, even if the person consciously resists sleep. The study of this rare condition has also revealed important insights about the relationship between sleep and consciousness. Researchers have observed that as patients with fatal familial insomnia lose their ability to sleep, they also begin to lose their grip on normal waking consciousness. The boundaries between sleeping and waking states become blurred, suggesting that these two states of consciousness are more interconnected than we might assume. Normal sleep serves as a kind of reset button for consciousness, allowing the brain to process experiences, consolidate memories, and prepare for the next period of wakefulness. Without this nightly renewal, consciousness itself begins to fragment and deteriorate. The hallucinations, confusion, and eventual dementia-like symptoms represent the breakdown of the very neural networks that create our sense of self and our understanding of reality. As we consider what would happen if a person never slept, fatal familial insomnia provides us with the most complete answer available in medical literature. It shows us that sleep is not merely beneficial or important for human health and functioning. It is absolutely essential for survival itself. The progression from initial sleep difficulties to complete systemic failure typically takes between 6 months and 3 years, but the trajectory is always the same. Without the ability to sleep, every system in the human body gradually breaks down until life becomes impossible to sustain. This understanding helps us appreciate the remarkable efficiency of normal sleep. Every night, as we surrender to unconsciousness, our brains and bodies engage in an intricate dance of restoration and repair that keeps us alive and functioning. The fact that this process feels effortless and automatic makes it easy to take for granted, but conditions like fatal familial insomnia remind us of just how miraculous and essential this nightly ritual truly is. The families affected by this condition have contributed enormously to our understanding of sleep by participating in research studies and allowing scientists to study the progression of their illness. Their sacrifice has helped illuminate fundamental truths about human biology and the absolute necessity of sleep for life itself. Through their experiences, we learn that sleep is not a luxury or a weakness, but rather one of the most sophisticated and essential biological processes that evolution has created. It is as necessary for human survival as breathing, eating, or maintaining body temperature. The fact that we spend roughly 1/3 of our lives asleep is not inefficiency, but rather evidence of how crucial this process is for maintaining life. As we contemplate the question of what would happen if a person never slept, the answer becomes clear through the lens of medical science. Eventually, inevitably, the lack of sleep would prove fatal. The human brain and body are simply not designed to function indefinitely without the restoration that sleep provides. But this knowledge, rather than frightening us, should fill us with gratitude for the elegant biological systems that sustain us each night. As we close our eyes and drift towards sleep, we are not simply losing consciousness. We are engaging in one of the most essential and life-sustaining processes that our species has evolved. The gentle pull towards sleep that we feel each evening is not a sign of weakness or laziness, but rather our body's wisdom calling us toward renewal and restoration. In surrendering to sleep, we trust in a process that has kept our species alive for millions of years, a process so essential that without it, life itself becomes impossible. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, you can rest peacefully, knowing that this nightly ritual is not just restful, but life-sustaining. Each moment of sleep is a gift to your brain, your body, and your future self. In the quiet darkness of sleep, miracles of restoration unfold, preparing you for whatever tomorrow may bring. Sleep is not the absence of life, but rather life's most essential pause, a sacred rhythm that connects us to the deepest patterns of existence itself. In embracing sleep, we embrace one of the most fundamental and protective forces in the natural world. But beyond the documented cases and medical literature lies another layer to this story, one that emerges from the documented attempts of individuals who have pushed the boundaries of human wakefulness in controlled environments. These cases offer us glimpses into the progressive deterioration that occurs when sleep becomes not impossible, but simply absent by choice. In the winter of 1963, a 17-year-old high school student named Randy Gardner embarked on what would become one of the most famous sleep deprivation experiments in medical history. Working with researchers from Stanford University, Gardner remained awake for 11 days and 24 minutes, setting a record that would later prompt medical authorities to cease recognizing such attempts due to safety concerns. Gardner's experience provides us with a detailed roadmap of how the human mind and body respond to extended wakefulness. Unlike those suffering from fatal familial insomnia, Gardner retained the biological capacity to sleep. His brain fought against the deprivation, creating a fascinating window into the body's defense mechanisms when pushed beyond normal limits. During the first few days, Gardner maintained relatively normal function. He could carry on conversations, play basketball, and even showed some improvement in certain motor skills as physical activity helped him stay alert. But beneath this apparently normal exterior, subtle changes were already beginning to unfold. By the fourth day, Gardner began experiencing mood changes and difficulty concentrating. Simple arithmetic became challenging, and he struggled with memory tasks that should have been routine for someone his age. His speech began to slur occasionally, and he developed what researchers described as a peculiar stare, as if he were looking through rather than at the people around him. The hallucinations began on the fifth day. Gardner reported seeing a street sign as a person, and text on computer screens appeared to transform into dancing figures. These visual distortions followed the same 90-minute cycles that researchers had observed in other cases of extreme sleep deprivation, suggesting his brain was attempting to achieve REM-like processing while awake. As the experiment progressed, Gardner's ability to form short-term memories became severely impaired. He would begin sentences and forget what he intended to say. His emotional regulation deteriorated, leading to periods of irritability, followed by inappropriate laughter or confusion about social situations. By the 10th day, Gardner could no longer complete simple mathematical problems. He became increasingly paranoid, suspecting that the researchers were playing tricks on him or withholding information. His speech became more fragmented, and he had difficulty following conversations or understanding complex instructions. Throughout this ordeal, medical monitoring revealed the physical toll the experiment was taking on Gardner's body. His blood pressure fluctuated unpredictably. His immune system markers showed signs of stress and suppression. His hormone levels, particularly cortisol and growth hormone, became severely disrupted, affecting everything from his metabolism to his body's ability to repair tissues. What makes Gardner's case particularly valuable to sleep researchers is the detailed documentation of his recovery. When he finally slept, he remained unconscious for 14 hours and 45 minutes. During this recovery sleep, his brain showed intense activity in the deeper stages of sleep, as if desperately trying to catch up on the restoration it had been denied. But perhaps most significantly, Gardner's experience had lasting consequences. Years later, as an adult, he developed chronic insomnia, struggling with sleep difficulties that persisted for decades. This suggests that extreme sleep deprivation may create permanent changes in the brain's sleep regulation systems, altering the very mechanisms that normally make sleep feel natural and effortless. Gardner's case, along with other documented experiments from the same era, revealed important patterns about how sleep deprivation affects different aspects of human functioning. Physical capabilities often remained surprisingly intact compared to cognitive abilities. Simple motor skills like walking or basic coordination could be maintained even as complex thinking became nearly impossible. This disparity occurs because different brain regions have varying levels of resilience to sleep deprivation. The motor cortex, which controls movement, appears more resistant to the effects of lost sleep than the prefrontal cortex, which handles complex reasoning and decision-making. This explains why someone who is severely sleep-deprived might still be able to perform routine physical tasks while being unable to solve simple problems or make sound judgments. The visual and auditory hallucinations that emerge during extreme sleep deprivation follow predictable patterns that reveal the brain's underlying architecture. These experiences typically begin in peripheral vision, where the brain has less precise processing capabilities. Shadows seem to move, objects appear to change shape, and stationary items might seem to pulse or breathe. As sleep deprivation continues, these hallucinations become more elaborate and centralized. People might see complete scenes playing out before them, hear conversations that aren't happening, or feel sensations on their skin from sources that don't exist. The brain, desperate to process the backlog of information that would normally be handled during sleep, begins creating experiences from incomplete sensory data. These hallucinations are not random, but reflect the brain's attempt to maintain some form of the processing that occurs during REM sleep. The content often relates to recent experiences, unresolved thoughts, or emotional concerns, much like dreams. However, because they occur while awake, they blend seamlessly with reality, making it increasingly difficult for the sleep-deprived person to distinguish between actual perceptions and brain-generated experiences. The emotional instability that accompanies severe sleep deprivation stems from the breakdown of communication between different brain regions. The amygdala, which processes fear and emotional responses, becomes hyperactive while losing its normal regulatory connection with the prefrontal cortex. This creates a state where emotions feel overwhelming, while the ability to manage them rationally becomes severely compromised. Sleep-deprived individuals often describe feeling as though their emotions are not their own. They might cry without understanding why, become angry over minor inconveniences, or feel sudden waves of anxiety or euphoria that seem to come from nowhere. These emotional storms reflect the brain's struggle to maintain the delicate balance of neurotransmitters and hormones that normally regulate mood. The social implications of these changes can be profound. People who are severely sleep-deprived often have difficulty reading social cues, understanding sarcasm or humor, or responding appropriately to others' emotions. They might laugh at inappropriate times, misinterpret friendly gestures as threatening, or become suspicious of people who are trying to help them. Memory formation during severe sleep deprivation becomes not just impaired, but actively distorted. The brain, unable to properly consolidate new information, begins creating false memories to fill in gaps. These fabricated memories feel completely real to the person experiencing them and can become indistinguishable from actual events. This phenomenon occurs because the hippocampus, which normally transfers information from short-term to long-term memory during sleep, becomes overwhelmed and dysfunctional. Without the proper consolidation process, the brain attempts to make sense of incomplete information by creating plausible but fictional narratives. These false memories can have serious consequences, as the sleep-deprived person may make decisions based on events that never actually occurred. They might believe they had conversations that didn't happen, remember promises that were never made, or recall details about situations that are completely inaccurate. The physical deterioration that accompanies extended sleep deprivation affects virtually every system in the body. The cardiovascular system, normally given a chance to rest and repair during sleep, remains under constant stress. Blood vessels lose their ability to properly regulate blood flow, leading to dangerous fluctuations in blood pressure and increased risk of cardiac events. The immune system's response to sleep deprivation is particularly concerning. White blood cell production decreases significantly, leaving the body vulnerable to infections that would normally be easily managed. The inflammatory response becomes dysregulated, creating a state of chronic inflammation that can damage tissues throughout the body. Metabolically, the body enters a crisis state during extreme sleep deprivation. Insulin sensitivity decreases dramatically, making it difficult for cells to absorb glucose from the bloodstream. This can lead to dangerous spikes in blood sugar levels, even in people without diabetes. The liver's ability to process toxins becomes impaired, allowing harmful substances to accumulate in the bloodstream. Temperature regulation, controlled by the hypothalamus, begins to fail as sleep deprivation continues. The body may swing between feeling intensely hot and cold, unable to maintain the precise temperature control that proper brain function requires. Sweating patterns become irregular, and the normal daily fluctuations in core body temperature become completely disrupted. The digestive system also suffers significantly during extended wakefulness. The production of digestive enzymes decreases, making it difficult to properly break down and absorb nutrients from food. The muscles of the digestive tract may become sluggish, leading to problems with motility and increasing the risk of digestive complications. Hormone production becomes chaotic during severe sleep deprivation. Growth hormone, normally released in pulses during deep sleep, drops to dangerously low levels, impairing the body's ability to repair tissues and maintain healthy cellular function. Reproductive hormones become severely disrupted, potentially affecting fertility and sexual function. The stress hormone cortisol, which normally follows a predictable daily rhythm, becomes elevated and irregular during sleep deprivation. This chronic elevation of cortisol contributes to many of the negative effects of lost sleep, including immune suppression, increased inflammation, and impaired cognitive function. Perhaps most concerning is the effect on the brain's waste removal system. During normal sleep, the glymphatic system increases its activity by up to 60%, flushing toxic proteins and metabolic waste from brain tissue. Without sleep, these harmful substances accumulate to dangerous levels, potentially causing permanent damage to neural networks. The proteins that accumulate during sleep deprivation include some that are associated with neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. While short-term sleep loss is unlikely to cause immediate permanent damage, extended periods without sleep could potentially contribute to long-term neurological problems. The blood-brain barrier, which normally protects the brain from harmful substances in the bloodstream, may become compromised during extreme sleep deprivation. This could allow toxins, inflammatory molecules, and other harmful substances to enter brain tissue, potentially causing additional damage to neural networks. As we consider these progressive changes that occur during extended wakefulness, it becomes clear that the human body simply cannot sustain indefinite periods without sleep. While individual resilience varies, and some people may be able to function longer than others without sleep, the eventual outcome is always the same: complete systemic breakdown. The documented cases of extreme sleep deprivation, whether voluntary like Randy Gardner's experiment or involuntary like fatal familial insomnia, all point to the same fundamental truth. Sleep is not optional for human survival. It is as essential as breathing, eating, or maintaining proper body temperature. The progressive nature of sleep deprivation effects means that the longer someone remains awake, the more dangerous their situation becomes. What begins as simple fatigue and difficulty, concentrating gradually escalates into hallucinations, emotional instability, and eventually complete physiological collapse. This understanding helps explain why evolution has preserved the need for sleep across virtually all animal species. Despite the apparent vulnerability that comes with unconsciousness, the restorative processes that occur during sleep are so essential that life simply cannot be sustained without them. The brain's attempts to compensate for lost sleep through microsleeps, hallucinations, and altered states of consciousness represent desperate emergency measures rather than sustainable alternatives. These compensatory mechanisms can help maintain basic function for limited periods, but they cannot replace the comprehensive restoration that occurs during proper sleep. As we reflect on what would happen if a person never slept, the answer emerges with scientific clarity. The human body, remarkable as it is in its ability to adapt and survive, cannot overcome the fundamental biological requirement for sleep. Eventually, inevitably, the lack of sleep would prove fatal. But this knowledge need not frighten us. Instead, it can deepen our appreciation for the elegant biological systems that sustain us each night. Sleep represents one of evolution's most sophisticated solutions to the challenges of maintaining complex life forms. It is a time when our bodies and minds engage in the essential work of repair, restoration, and preparation for the challenges ahead. The gentle pull towards sleep that we feel each evening is not a sign of weakness, but rather our body's wisdom guiding us toward one of the most important activities we can engage in. In surrendering to sleep, we participate in a process that has sustained our species for millions of years. A process so fundamental that without it, life itself becomes impossible. Tonight, as you prepare for rest, you can find comfort in knowing that sleep is not simply a pleasant escape from the day's activities, but rather an essential biological process that keeps you healthy, alert, and alive. Each moment of sleep is a gift to your future self, an investment in your physical health, mental clarity, and emotional well-being. The mysteries of sleep continue to unfold as scientists develop new technologies and methods for studying this fundamental aspect of human biology. With each discovery, we gain deeper appreciation for the intricate processes that unfold each night as we rest. These insights remind us that sleep is not time lost, but rather time invested in the most essential maintenance our bodies and minds require. In the quiet darkness of sleep, miracles of restoration occur at the cellular level. Memories are consolidated, toxins are cleared, tissues are repaired, and the delicate balance of hormones and neurotransmitters is restored. This nightly renewal prepares us not just for the next day, but for a lifetime of healthy function. As we close our eyes and drift towards sleep, we can rest peacefully in the knowledge that we are engaging in one of nature's most perfect designs. Sleep connects us to the deepest rhythms of life itself, a sacred pause that allows our bodies and minds to heal, grow, and prepare for whatever tomorrow may bring. In embracing sleep, we embrace one of the most protective and nurturing forces in the natural world. It is a reminder that sometimes the most important thing we can do is simply rest, trusting in the ancient wisdom of our bodies to carry out the essential work of restoration, while we peacefully surrender to the gentle darkness of night. The story of what happens if a person never sleeps ultimately becomes a celebration of sleep itself, a recognition of its profound importance in sustaining the miracle of human consciousness and the complex biological systems that make our lives possible. In understanding the consequences of sleeplessness, we come to appreciate the precious gift of rest that awaits us each evening, ready to renew and restore us for whatever adventures tomorrow may hold. Sleep well, knowing that in doing so, you honor one of the most fundamental and life-sustaining processes that nature has created. Rest peacefully in the understanding that sleep is not the absence of life, but rather life's most essential rhythm, a gentle tide that carries us safely through the night toward the promise of a new day. New day. Yet even as we understand these profound physical changes, there remains another dimension to prolonged wakefulness that unfolds gradually, like watching paint dry or observing the slow movement of shadows across a room. The transformation is so gradual that those experiencing it often don't recognize the depth of their own deterioration until the changes become impossible to ignore. When someone approaches their fourth day without sleep, something subtle but significant begins to shift in how they perceive the world around them. Colors might seem slightly more vivid or strangely muted. Sounds take on different qualities, perhaps seeming to echo longer than they should, or arriving with unusual clarity from distant sources. These changes represent the early stages of what sleep researchers call perceptual drift, a gentle loosening of the brain's normal processing patterns. The visual cortex, that sophisticated region at the back of the brain responsible for interpreting what we see, begins to show signs of strain during this period. Under normal circumstances, this area processes millions of bits of visual information every second, seamlessly creating our coherent view of reality. But as sleep debt accumulates, tiny errors begin to creep into this processing system. At first, these errors are so small, they barely register in conscious awareness. A shadow might seem to flicker slightly when viewed from the corner of the eye. Text on a page might appear to shimmer for just a moment before settling back into focus. These subtle distortions represent the visual cortex struggling to maintain its usual precision without the nightly restoration that sleep provides. The brain's attempt to compensate for these processing errors creates what neurologists call compensatory hyperactivity. Regions that would normally work at moderate levels begin operating in overdrive, trying to maintain normal function despite increasing fatigue. This hyperactivity can initially make some aspects of perception seem enhanced, but it comes at a tremendous metabolic cost. During this same period, the brain's language centers begin showing signs of stress. The left hemisphere, where most language processing occurs in the majority of people, starts to struggle with the complex task of translating thoughts into words and understanding the speech of others. Conversations become more effortful, requiring increased concentration to follow the flow of ideas. This linguistic deterioration often manifests first in subtle ways. Someone might pause mid-sentence, searching for a word that would normally come easily. They might misunderstand simple questions or respond inappropriately to statements that should be straightforward. The rich vocabulary and nuanced communication skills that characterize normal human interaction begin to diminish as the brain's language networks operate under increasing strain. The hippocampus, that seahorse-shaped structure deep within the temporal lobe, faces particular challenges during extended wakefulness. This region serves as the brain's primary memory consolidation center, transferring important information from temporary storage to more permanent neural networks. Under normal circumstances, this transfer occurs primarily during sleep, when the hippocampus can work without interference from new incoming information. Without sleep, the hippocampus becomes increasingly overwhelmed. New memories struggle to form properly, while existing memories become harder to access accurately. The result is a gradual disconnection from both recent experiences and established knowledge, creating a sense of mental fog that deepens as wakefulness continues. As someone enters their 5th and 6th days without sleep, if such extended wakefulness were somehow possible, the boundaries between internal mental experiences and external reality begin to blur in more pronounced ways. The brain, desperate to achieve some form of the processing that normally occurs during REM sleep, begins generating experiences that feel completely real but have no basis in the surrounding environment. These experiences often begin as fleeting glimpses of movement in peripheral vision. The sleep-deprived person might turn to look at something that seemed to move, only to find nothing there. Initially, they might dismiss these experiences as tricks of tired eyes. But as sleep deprivation continues, they become more frequent and harder to ignore. The timing of these experiences follows a fascinating pattern that reveals the brain's underlying architecture. They tend to occur in roughly 90-minute cycles, corresponding to the natural rhythm of REM sleep. It's as if the brain is attempting to dream while awake, creating a surreal overlay of dreamlike experiences on top of waking consciousness. What makes these experiences particularly compelling is their quality of absolute reality. Unlike the obviously strange content of typical dreams, the hallucinations that occur during severe sleep deprivation often involve perfectly ordinary scenarios. Someone might see a colleague walking down a hallway, hear their phone ringing, or notice a cup of coffee sitting on a table that isn't actually there. This realistic quality occurs because the same neural networks that process actual sensory information are generating these experiences. The visual cortex creates the images, the auditory cortex produces the sounds, and the brain's integration centers weave them into coherent experiences that feel indistinguishable from reality. The emotional impact of these experiences can be profound. Someone who sees a family member who isn't actually present might feel genuine joy at the reunion, followed by confusion and distress when the person seems to vanish. These emotional responses are completely authentic because the brain processes the hallucinated experiences as if they were real events. During this same period, the brain's executive functions continue their steady decline. The prefrontal cortex, that sophisticated region behind the forehead that handles planning, decision-making, and impulse control, becomes increasingly compromised. Tasks that require multiple steps become difficult to complete. The ability to weigh consequences before acting diminishes significantly. This executive dysfunction creates a particularly dangerous situation because the sleep-deprived person may not recognize the severity of their impairment. They might attempt to drive a car, operate machinery, or make important decisions while their judgment is severely compromised. The very brain systems that would normally signal the need for caution are the ones most affected by sleep deprivation. The social implications of these changes extend far beyond individual functioning. Sleep-deprived individuals often lose their ability to read social cues accurately, misinterpreting facial expressions, tone of voice, and body language. A friendly smile might be perceived as threatening, while genuine concern from others might be dismissed as intrusive or manipulative. These misperceptions can strain relationships and create conflict at precisely the time when support from others would be most beneficial. Family members and friends may notice dramatic personality changes, describing the sleep-deprived person as unlike themselves, irritable, paranoid, or emotionally unstable. The autonomic nervous system, which controls all the automatic functions that keep us alive without conscious thought, begins showing signs of significant stress during extended wakefulness. Heart rate variability, the healthy fluctuation in time between heartbeats, becomes reduced. Blood pressure regulation becomes less precise. The delicate balance of the nervous system that normally adjusts automatically to changing circumstances becomes increasingly rigid and unresponsive. Digestive function suffers as the parasympathetic nervous system, responsible for rest and digest activities, becomes suppressed in favor of the sympathetic fight or flight response. The body, interpreting prolonged wakefulness as a sign of danger, prioritizes immediate survival over long-term maintenance functions. This shift in autonomic balance affects every organ system. The kidneys struggle to regulate fluid balance and filter waste products effectively. The liver's ability to process toxins and metabolize nutrients becomes impaired. Even basic cellular functions, like protein synthesis and DNA repair, slow down significantly without the restorative processes that normally occur during sleep. The endocrine system, that complex network of hormone-producing glands, becomes increasingly chaotic during severe sleep deprivation. The hypothalamic pituitary axis, which coordinates hormone production throughout the body, loses its normal rhythmic patterns. Growth hormone, typically released in pulses during deep sleep, drops to minimal levels, impairing tissue repair and cellular regeneration. Reproductive hormones become severely disrupted, potentially affecting fertility and sexual function. The thyroid gland may reduce its output of hormones that regulate metabolism, leading to feelings of sluggishness and cognitive slowing. The adrenal glands, responsible for stress hormone production, may become either hyperactive or exhausted, depending on individual physiological responses. As sleep deprivation extends beyond a week, the cumulative effects create a cascade of physiological dysfunction that becomes increasingly difficult for the body to manage. The immune system, already weakened by days without proper rest, becomes even more compromised. White blood cell counts may drop significantly, leaving the body vulnerable to infections that would normally be easily managed. The inflammatory response, which should be carefully regulated to fight infections without damaging healthy tissue, becomes dysregulated and excessive. This chronic inflammation can damage blood vessels, organs, and tissues throughout the body, creating a state of accelerated aging and increased disease risk. Temperature regulation, controlled by the hypothalamus, becomes increasingly erratic. The body may experience sudden episodes of feeling intensely hot or cold, with sweating patterns that seem unrelated to environmental conditions. The normal daily fluctuations in core body temperature, which help regulate circadian rhythms, become completely disrupted. The skin, the body's largest organ, begins showing signs of the internal stress. Healing slows significantly, making even minor cuts and bruises take much longer to resolve. The skin may become pale, dry, or develop an unhealthy appearance as circulation and cellular repair processes become impaired. Muscle coordination and fine motor control deteriorate as the cerebellum and motor cortex struggle to function without adequate rest. Simple tasks like writing, typing, or using utensils become more difficult. Balance may become unsteady, increasing the risk of falls and injuries. The eyes themselves show signs of strain during extended wakefulness. The ability to focus may become impaired, and the eyes may feel dry and irritated as tear production decreases. Vision may become blurry or develop blind spots as the visual processing centers in the brain become overwhelmed. Perhaps most concerning during this extended period is the progressive breakdown of reality testing. The brain's ability to distinguish between internal experiences and external events, as hallucinations become more frequent and realistic. the sleep-deprived person may begin to lose confidence in their own perceptions. This breakdown doesn't occur suddenly, but develops gradually, like watching a photograph slowly fade. Initially, the person might question whether they really saw or heard something unusual. As time progresses, they may become less able to distinguish between memories of real events and memories of hallucinated experiences. The psychological impact of this reality breakdown can be profound. Someone who has always trusted their own perceptions and judgment may begin to feel fundamentally disconnected from the world around them. This disconnection can lead to feelings of isolation, confusion, and fear that compound the already significant stress of sleep deprivation. During this phase, the sleep-deprived individual may develop what appears to be paranoid thinking, but which actually represents a logical response to their altered perceptions. If you're experiencing realistic hallucinations and can't trust your own senses, it becomes reasonable to question whether others are being truthful, or whether situations are as they appear. This apparent paranoia often focuses on the people closest to the sleep-deprived person. Family members trying to help may be viewed with suspicion. Medical professionals offering treatment may be seen as having hidden agendas. This defensive response, while understandable given the altered state of consciousness, can make it even more difficult to provide the care and support that the person desperately needs. The communication difficulties that develop during severe sleep deprivation extend beyond simple word-finding problems. The complex task of organizing thoughts into coherent speech becomes increasingly challenging. Sentences may trail off unfinished, or the person may jump between topics without apparent connection. Understanding the speech of others becomes equally problematic. The brain's ability to process the rapid stream of sounds that make up human speech requires sophisticated neural networks operating at peak efficiency. Sleep deprivation disrupts these networks, making conversations feel like trying to understand a foreign language. These communication breakdowns can be particularly distressing for both the sleep-deprived individual and their loved ones. The ability to express needs, concerns, and emotions becomes compromised at precisely the time when clear communication would be most important for getting help and support. As we consider the progression of changes that occur during extreme sleep deprivation, it becomes clear that the human brain and body are engaged in an increasingly desperate struggle to maintain basic function. Every system becomes stressed, every process becomes less efficient, and every aspect of normal human experience becomes distorted. The remarkable aspect of this progression is not how quickly it occurs, but how the body continues to fight for survival even under these extreme circumstances. The brain's attempt to achieve dreamlike processing while awake, the cardiovascular system's effort to maintain circulation despite constant stress, the immune system's continued attempts to fight infections despite severe impairment, all represent the extraordinary resilience of human physiology. Yet this resilience has limits, and those limits become increasingly apparent as sleep deprivation continues. The compensatory mechanisms that allow short-term survival without sleep begin to fail. The emergency systems that maintain basic function during crisis become exhausted. The body's remarkable ability to adapt reaches its breaking point. The progression we observe during voluntary sleep deprivation, experiments like Randy Gardner's, provides us with a window into these processes. But it's important to remember that such experiments have natural limits. Eventually, even the most determined individual will succumb to microsleeps or complete exhaustion, allowing their brain to steal moments of the restoration it desperately needs. In contrast, conditions like fatal familial insomnia show us what happens when these natural safety mechanisms fail completely. When the brain loses its fundamental capacity to sleep, the progression towards systemic failure becomes inevitable and ultimately fatal. These tragic cases demonstrate that sleep is not merely beneficial or important for human health, it is absolutely essential for survival. The documented progression of fatal familial insomnia provides medical science with the clearest possible evidence of what would happen if a person truly never slept. The initial months of declining sleep quality give way to complete insomnia, followed by the progressive breakdown of every major body system, and eventually death. This progression occurs despite the best efforts of medical professionals using every available treatment. Powerful sedatives may provide temporary relief, but cannot restore the brain's fundamental architecture for sleep once it has been damaged. The condition follows its tragic course, regardless of medical intervention, highlighting the absolute necessity of intact sleep systems for human survival. As we reflect on these profound changes that occur during extended wakefulness, we gain a deeper appreciation for the elegant complexity of normal sleep. What might seem like a simple process of closing our eyes and becoming unconscious is actually an intricate orchestration of neural activity, hormonal regulation, and physiological restoration that has been refined over millions of years of evolution. The fact that this process occurs automatically, without conscious effort or control, makes it easy to take for granted. We don't think about the precise timing of melatonin release, the coordination of growth hormone pulses, or the activation of the brain's waste clearance systems. These processes unfold seamlessly in the background of our awareness, sustaining life with remarkable efficiency. The progressive breakdown that occurs without sleep illuminates just how many essential functions depend on this nightly restoration. Memory consolidation, immune system strengthening, tissue repair, toxin clearance, hormone regulation, temperature control, and countless other processes all require the specific conditions that exist only during proper sleep. This understanding helps explain why evolution has preserved the need for sleep across virtually all animal species, despite the apparent vulnerability that comes with unconsciousness. The benefits of sleep are so fundamental to survival that life cannot be sustained without them, regardless of the potential dangers of being unconscious and vulnerable. The brain's attempts to compensate for lost sleep through microsleeps, altered consciousness states, and emergency functioning represent remarkable adaptations, but they cannot replace the comprehensive restoration that occurs during normal sleep cycles. These compensatory mechanisms can help maintain basic survival for limited periods, but they extract a tremendous cost from the body's resources and cannot be sustained indefinitely. As we contemplate what would happen if a person never slept, the scientific evidence provides a clear and unambiguous answer. The human body, remarkable as it is in its ability to adapt and survive under challenging conditions, cannot overcome the fundamental biological requirement for sleep. The progressive breakdown that begins within hours of sleep loss would eventually prove fatal if sleep never returned. This knowledge should not alarm us, but rather inspire profound gratitude for the sophisticated biological systems that sustain us each night. Sleep represents one of evolution's most elegant solutions to the challenge of maintaining complex multicellular life. It is a time when our bodies shift from the active work of living in the world to the essential work of maintaining and restoring the systems that make life possible. The gentle drowsiness that signals the approach of bedtime is not a sign of weakness or failure, but rather our body's wisdom calling us toward one of the most important activities we can engage in. This daily transition from wakefulness to sleep connects us to rhythms that are older than human civilization, patterns of rest and activity that have sustained life on Earth for countless generations. In our modern world, where artificial light extends the day and digital devices compete for our attention, it can be easy to view sleep as an inconvenience or obstacle to productivity. But understanding the profound importance of sleep for every aspect of human health and functioning reveals this perspective as fundamentally misguided. Sleep is not time lost, but time invested in our most essential maintenance and restoration. It is not a luxury for those who can afford it, but a biological necessity for every human being. The hours we spend sleeping are among the most productive hours of our day, even though we're not consciously aware of the intricate processes unfolding within us. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, You can find comfort in knowing that you are about to engage in one of the most important and life-sustaining activities possible. As your eyes grow heavy and your thoughts begin to slow, your body is preparing for a symphony of restoration that will touch every cell, every organ, every system within you. The darkness that surrounds sleep is not empty, but full of healing activity. Your brain will consolidate the day's experiences into lasting memories. Your immune system will strengthen its defenses against disease. Your muscles and tissues will repair themselves, and your mind will process emotions and experiences in the safe space of dreams. As you drift toward unconsciousness, you join the billions of people around the world who surrender each night to this ancient rhythm. In sleep, we are connected not only to our own biological needs, but to the fundamental patterns that sustain all life on Earth. We participate in a process so essential that without it, consciousness itself becomes impossible. The gentle pull towards sleep that you feel is your body's way of ensuring your survival and well-being. In responding to this call, you demonstrate trust in systems that have sustained human life for millennia. You acknowledge that sometimes the most important thing you can do is rest, allowing the profound wisdom of your body to carry out its essential work, while you peacefully let go of the day's concerns. Sleep is not the absence of life, but rather life's most essential rhythm, a sacred pause that allows renewal and restoration to occur. In the quiet darkness of sleep, miracles unfold at the cellular level, preparing you not just for tomorrow, but for a lifetime of healthy function and conscious experience. As you close your eyes and feel consciousness beginning to fade, know that you are engaging in one of nature's most perfect designs. Rest peacefully in the understanding that sleep is among the most protective and nurturing forces in the natural world, a gentle tide that carries you safely through the night toward the promise of a new day. In embracing sleep, you honor the profound wisdom of your own biology and connect with the deepest patterns of existence itself. Sleep well, knowing that in doing so, you participate in one of the most essential and beautiful processes that life has created, a nightly renewal that makes all the wonders of conscious experience possible. The story of what happens if a person never sleeps ultimately becomes a celebration of sleep's profound importance, a recognition of its role in sustaining the miracle of human consciousness and the complex biological systems that make our lives possible. In understanding the consequences of sleeplessness, we come to appreciate the precious gift of rest that awaits us each evening, ready to renew and restore us for whatever adventures tomorrow may bring. The deeper we venture into the territory of prolonged wakefulness, the more we begin to witness changes that unfold slowly, like watching a time-lapse photograph of shadows moving across a landscape. By the time someone has been awake for a full week, their body has entered a state that medical professionals describe as chronic sleep debt, a condition where every biological system operates under increasing strain. The liver, that remarkable organ responsible for processing over 500 different chemical reactions, begins showing signs of significant stress during this extended period. Under normal circumstances, the liver performs much of its most intensive detoxification work during sleep, when the body's demands for energy are lower and resources can be dedicated to cleaning and repair. Without adequate sleep, toxins that would normally be efficiently processed begin accumulating in the bloodstream. This accumulation creates a subtle but persistent burden on every organ system. The kidneys, working overtime to filter an increasingly complex mixture of waste products and unprocessed toxins, begin showing early signs of strain. Blood tests during this period often reveal elevated levels of metabolic byproducts that should normally be cleared efficiently from the system. The skin, our body's largest organ and first line of defense against the external world, begins reflecting the internal stress of prolonged wakefulness. Cellular repair processes slow significantly, making even minor cuts and scrapes take longer to heal properly. the natural turnover of skin cells becomes sluggish, leading to a dull, tired appearance that mirrors the internal state of cellular exhaustion. During this same period, the brain's waste management system faces an increasingly impossible task. The glymphatic system, that sophisticated network of channels that flushes toxic proteins from brain tissue, operates at only a fraction of its normal capacity without sleep. Proteins associated with cellular damage begin accumulating in concentrations that would normally trigger alarm in medical monitoring. These protein deposits don't cause immediate symptoms, but they represent a dangerous trend toward the kind of cellular dysfunction associated with accelerated aging and neurodegenerative processes. The brain, usually so efficient at maintaining its own health and function, begins showing signs that it cannot indefinitely postpone the essential maintenance that sleep provides. The cardiovascular system, having operated under constant stress for days without the restorative periods that normally occur during sleep, begins showing more pronounced signs of strain. Blood pressure, which should naturally decrease during rest periods, remains elevated around the clock. The heart muscle itself, working continuously without its normal periods of reduced demand, begins showing early signs of fatigue. Heart rate variability, that healthy fluctuation in the time between heartbeats that indicates a resilient cardiovascular system, decreases significantly during prolonged wakefulness. This reduction reflects the autonomic nervous system's struggle to maintain the delicate balance between activation and rest that characterizes healthy function. The blood vessels throughout the body lose some of their normal flexibility and responsiveness. The endothelium, that thin layer of cells lining the inside of blood vessels, becomes less able to regulate blood flow and pressure effectively. This vascular dysfunction increases the risk of complications and reduces the body's ability to respond appropriately to changing demands. As someone approaches their second week without adequate sleep, if such extended wakefulness was somehow sustainable, the endocrine system begins showing signs of more profound dysfunction. The intricate dance of hormones that normally regulates everything from appetite to mood becomes increasingly chaotic and unpredictable. Insulin sensitivity, the body's ability to respond appropriately to this crucial hormone that regulates blood sugar, deteriorates significantly. Even in healthy individuals with no history of metabolic problems, blood glucose levels may begin fluctuating in concerning patterns. The cells throughout the body become increasingly resistant to insulin signals, creating a state that resembles the early stages of diabetes. The thyroid gland, that butterfly-shaped organ in the neck that regulates metabolic rate, may begin reducing its output of essential hormones. This reduction leads to a general slowing of cellular processes throughout the body, contributing to feelings of sluggishness and mental fog that compound the already significant cognitive impairments of sleep deprivation. Reproductive hormones become severely disrupted during extended wakefulness. In women, menstrual cycles may become irregular or stop entirely. In men, testosterone production may decrease significantly, affecting not just reproductive function, but also muscle mass, bone density, and overall energy levels. These changes reflect the body's prioritization of immediate survival over long-term reproductive capacity. The adrenal glands, those small organs sitting atop the kidneys that produce stress hormones, face a particularly challenging situation during prolonged wakefulness. Having produced elevated levels of cortisol and adrenaline for days or weeks, they may begin showing signs of exhaustion. This adrenal fatigue can lead to unpredictable swings between periods of hyper-alertness and complete energy collapse. During this extended period, the immune system's deterioration becomes more pronounced and dangerous. The production of new immune cells drops to critically low levels, while existing immune cells become less effective at recognizing and responding to threats. The body becomes increasingly vulnerable to infections that would normally be easily managed by a healthy immune response. The inflammatory response, which should be carefully calibrated to fight infections without damaging healthy tissue, becomes dysregulated and excessive. This chronic inflammation can damage blood vessels, organs, and tissues throughout the body, creating a state of accelerated aging and increased disease risk that extends far beyond the immediate effects of sleep loss. White blood cell counts may drop to levels typically seen in immunocompromised patients, leaving the body defenseless against bacterial, viral, and fungal infections. Even minor exposures to common pathogens can lead to serious illness when the immune system is this severely compromised. The brain's attempt to maintain consciousness during this extended period creates increasingly bizarre compensations. The visual cortex, struggling to process information accurately without adequate rest, may begin creating more frequent and elaborate hallucinations. These experiences often feel completely real and may involve all the senses, not just sight and sound. The auditory processing centers in the brain may begin generating phantom sounds, voices, or music that seem to come from specific locations in the environment. These auditory hallucinations can be particularly disturbing because they often seem to carry emotional content or personal significance, reflecting the brain's attempt to process unresolved psychological material during waking hours. Tactile hallucinations may also develop, creating sensations of being touched, of insects crawling on the skin, or of temperature changes that have no basis in the actual environment. These experiences occur because the same neural networks that process real sensory information are generating these phantom sensations in their desperate attempt to achieve some form of the processing that normally occurs during sleep. The timing and content of these hallucinations continue to follow patterns that mirror normal sleep cycles, suggesting that the brain is essentially trying to dream while awake. However, because these dreamlike experiences occur during consciousness, they blend seamlessly with reality in ways that can be profoundly disorienting and distressing. Memory formation during this period becomes not just impaired, but actively distorted in dangerous ways. The hippocampus, overwhelmed by the constant influx of new information without adequate time for consolidation, begins creating false memories to fill gaps in processing. These fabricated memories feel completely authentic and may be more vivid and emotionally compelling than actual memories. This phenomenon occurs because the brain, unable to properly distinguish between real experiences and internally generated content, treats hallucinations and false memories as if they were actual events. The result is a gradual corruption of the person's understanding of their own history and recent experiences. The social and behavioral consequences of these changes become increasingly serious. The sleep-deprived individual may make decisions based on events that never actually occurred, have conversations they believe happened but didn't, or remember promises and commitments that exist only in their distorted memory system. Family members and caregivers often report that the person seems to be living in an alternate reality, responding to situations and people that aren't present, and referencing events that never took place. This disconnection from shared reality can be particularly distressing for loved ones who are trying to provide care and support. The prefrontal cortex, that sophisticated region responsible for executive function and judgment, becomes increasingly compromised as sleep deprivation continues. The ability to plan ahead, weigh consequences, and make rational decisions deteriorates to the point where the person may be unable to make even simple choices about their own care and safety. This executive dysfunction creates a dangerous situation where the individual may not recognize the severity of their condition or the need for help. They may refuse medical attention, make dangerous decisions about driving or operating equipment, or engage in behaviors that put themselves or others at risk. The emotional regulation systems in the brain become increasingly unstable during extended wakefulness. The amygdala, that almond-shaped structure that processes fear and emotional responses, becomes hyperactive and loses its normal regulatory connections with the prefrontal cortex. This creates a state where emotions feel overwhelming and uncontrollable. The sleep-deprived person may experience rapid mood swings that seem to come from nowhere, intense anxiety about situations that would normally feel manageable, or sudden episodes of euphoria that are completely inappropriate to their circumstances. These emotional storms reflect the brain's struggle to maintain the delicate neurochemical balance that normally regulates mood and emotional response. The neurotransmitter systems that govern emotion become increasingly dysregulated without sleep. Serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine levels fluctuate wildly, creating a neurochemical chaos that makes stable mood and emotional regulation nearly impossible. The brain's ability to produce and regulate these crucial chemicals depends heavily on the restoration and rebalancing that occurs during normal sleep cycles. As extended wakefulness continues, the boundaries between different states of consciousness begin to blur in ways that are both fascinating and deeply concerning from a medical perspective. The brain may begin cycling through states that resemble different stages of sleep, while the person remains technically awake, creating a hybrid condition that is neither true wakefulness nor proper sleep. These altered states of consciousness may include periods where the person appears alert and responsive, but is actually experiencing a form of waking dreaming where their responses are based on internal experiences rather than external reality. They may carry on conversations with people who aren't present, respond to questions that weren't asked, or engage in complex behaviors that make sense within their altered perception, but are completely inappropriate to their actual circumstances. The phenomenon of microsleeps becomes more frequent and longer during this period. But even these brief moments of rest cannot provide the comprehensive restoration that proper sleep cycles offer. The brain steals these tiny periods of unconsciousness whenever possible, but they occur unpredictably and may happen during activities where any loss of awareness could be dangerous. The sleep-deprived person may have no awareness that these micro-sleeps are occurring, experiencing them as brief moments of confusion or lost time. They might find themselves in different locations without remembering how they got there, or discover that significant amounts of time have passed without any memory of what occurred during those periods. Temperature regulation, controlled by the hypothalamus deep within the brain, becomes increasingly erratic as sleep deprivation continues. The body may experience sudden episodes of feeling intensely hot or cold that seem unrelated to environmental conditions. Sweating patterns become irregular and unpredictable, sometimes occurring profusely during cool conditions or failing to occur when the body needs cooling. The normal daily fluctuations in core body temperature, which help regulate circadian rhythms and support healthy sleep patterns, become completely disrupted. This temperature dysregulation creates additional stress on the cardiovascular system and makes it even more difficult for the body to achieve the physiological conditions necessary for restorative sleep. The digestive system faces increasing challenges during extended wakefulness. The production of digestive enzymes decreases, making it difficult to properly break down and absorb nutrients from food. The muscles of the digestive tract become sluggish, leading to problems with motility and increasing the risk of complications like constipation or gastroesophageal reflux. The gut microbiome, that complex ecosystem of beneficial bacteria that plays crucial roles in digestion, immune function, and even mood regulation, becomes imbalanced without adequate sleep. These disruptions to gut health can create additional problems with inflammation, immune function, and nutrient absorption that compound the already serious effects of sleep deprivation. Appetite regulation becomes chaotic as the hormones that signal hunger and satiety lose their normal patterns. The sleep-deprived person may experience intense cravings for high-calorie foods, particularly those high in sugar and refined carbohydrates, as the body attempts to obtain quick energy to sustain its increasingly desperate functioning. Paradoxically, despite these intense food cravings, the actual ability to taste and enjoy food may become impaired. The sensory systems responsible for taste and smell can become dulled during severe sleep deprivation, making food less satisfying and potentially leading to poor nutritional choices. As we consider the progression of changes that occur during weeks of inadequate sleep, we begin to see patterns that mirror some of the most serious medical conditions known to science. The systemic inflammation, immune suppression, cardiovascular stress, and neurological dysfunction that develop during prolonged wakefulness resemble the physiological changes seen in severe chronic diseases. The body's stress response systems, having operated at maximum activation for extended periods, may begin showing signs of exhaustion and failure. The hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which coordinates the body's response to stress, becomes increasingly dysregulated and may eventually become unable to mount appropriate responses to challenges. This stress system failure can lead to a state where the body cannot adequately respond to infections, injuries, or other medical emergencies. The physiological reserves that normally allow humans to survive illnesses and recover from injuries become depleted, leaving the individual vulnerable to complications that would normally be manageable. The liver's ability to synthesize essential proteins, including those necessary for blood clotting and immune function, becomes compromised during extended sleep deprivation. Blood tests during this period often show abnormalities in liver enzymes and protein levels that indicate significant hepatic stress and dysfunction. The kidneys, working continuously to filter an increasingly complex mixture of toxins and metabolic waste products, may begin showing signs of decreased function. Electrolyte imbalances become more common and severe, potentially affecting heart rhythm, muscle function, and neurological activity. The bone marrow, responsible for producing new blood cells, may reduce its activity during prolonged sleep deprivation. This can lead to decreased production of red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets, creating additional risks for anemia, infection, and bleeding complications. The skeletal system itself may begin showing signs of accelerated bone loss as the hormonal disruptions of sleep deprivation affect calcium metabolism and bone formation. The muscles throughout the body may lose mass and strength as protein synthesis decreases and muscle breakdown accelerates. The respiratory system faces increasing challenges as the muscles responsible for breathing become fatigued and the brain's control of breathing patterns becomes less precise. Sleep-disordered breathing patterns may develop even during wakefulness, leading to periods of inadequate oxygenation that create additional stress on the heart and other organs. The eyes, those sophisticated organs that allow us to perceive the visual world, begin showing signs of significant strain during extended wakefulness. The ability to focus may become increasingly impaired, and the eyes may feel persistently dry and irritated as tear production decreases and the normal blink reflex becomes less frequent. Vision itself may become compromised as the visual processing centers in the brain struggle to function without adequate rest. Colors may appear less vivid, contrast sensitivity may decrease, and the ability to track moving objects or shift focus between near and far distances may become impaired. Perhaps most significantly, the blood-brain barrier, that crucial defense system that protects the brain from harmful substances in the bloodstream, may become compromised during extreme sleep deprivation. This breakdown could allow toxins, inflammatory molecules, and other harmful substances to enter brain tissue, potentially causing additional damage to neural networks. The cerebrospinal fluid, which normally circulates through the brain and spinal cord to provide nutrients and remove waste products, may become less effective at its protective functions. The pressure dynamics within the skull may become altered, potentially affecting brain function in subtle but important ways. As we observe these profound changes that occur during extended periods without sleep, we begin to understand why medical authorities stopped recognizing attempts to break sleep deprivation records. The risks to human health and survival become so significant that continued wakefulness poses immediate dangers to life itself. The documented cases of extreme voluntary sleep deprivation, such as Randy Gardner's 11-day experiment, provide valuable insights into human resilience and the brain's remarkable ability to adapt to extreme circumstances. However, these cases also demonstrate clear limits to that adaptability and show the serious consequences that develop when sleep is denied for extended periods. What makes these voluntary experiments different from conditions like fatal familial insomnia is that healthy individuals retain the fundamental capacity to sleep. Their brains continue to generate microsleeps, periods of altered consciousness, and eventually complete exhaustion that forces rest. These natural safety mechanisms, while imperfect, provide some protection against the most severe consequences of sleep loss. In contrast, those suffering from fatal familial insomnia have lost the brain's fundamental architecture for sleep. Their thalamus, that crucial relay station for sensory information and sleep regulation, becomes progressively more damaged and unable to generate the neural patterns necessary for sleep. Without these natural safety mechanisms, the progression towards systemic failure becomes inevitable. The study of fatal familial insomnia has provided medical science with perhaps the clearest evidence of what would happen if a person truly never slept again. The condition follows a predictable course from initial sleep difficulties through complete insomnia, systemic breakdown, and eventually death. This progression occurs despite the best available medical care and demonstrates conclusively that sleep is not optional for human survival. The families affected by this rare genetic condition have made enormous contributions to our understanding of sleep by participating in research studies and allowing scientists to document the progression of their illness. Through their sacrifice, we have learned fundamental truths about the absolute necessity of sleep for maintaining human life. These tragic cases show us that sleep is not simply a pleasant respite from the challenges of daily life, but rather one of the most essential biological processes that evolution has created. The fact that we spend approximately 1/3 of our lives sleeping is not inefficiency or waste, but rather evidence of how crucial this process is for sustaining the complex systems that make human consciousness and survival possible. The brain's waste clearance systems, the immune system's restoration processes, the cardiovascular system's repair mechanisms, the endocrine system's regulatory functions, and countless other essential activities all depend on the specific conditions that exist during proper sleep. These processes cannot be adequately replaced by conscious rest or meditation, no matter how deep or prolonged. The progressive breakdown that occurs without sleep illuminates the incredible sophistication of normal sleep architecture. What might appear to be a simple process of becoming unconscious is actually an intricate orchestration of neural activity, hormonal regulation, and physiological restoration that has been refined over millions of years of evolution. The different stages of sleep, from light, non-REM, through deep slow-wave sleep to REM dreaming, each serve specific and irreplaceable functions. The precise timing and cycling of these stages creates optimal conditions for different types of restoration and maintenance that cannot occur during wakefulness or during disrupted sleep. The circadian rhythm that regulates our sleep-wake cycle represents one of the most fundamental biological clocks in living systems. This internal timekeeper, synchronized by light and darkness but capable of independent function, coordinates not just sleep, but hundreds of other physiological processes throughout the body. When this circadian system becomes disrupted, as it inevitably does during prolonged wakefulness, the effects cascade through every aspect of human physiology. Hormone production loses its normal timing. Body temperature regulation becomes erratic. Immune function becomes impaired, and the delicate balance of neurotransmitters that regulate mood and cognition becomes chaotic. The remarkable aspect of studying sleep deprivation is not how quickly problems develop, but how the human body continues to fight for survival even under these extreme circumstances. The brain's attempts to achieve dreamlike processing while awake, the cardiovascular system's efforts to maintain circulation despite constant stress, the immune system's continued attempts to fight infections despite severe impairment, all represent the extraordinary resilience of human physiology. Yet this resilience has absolute limits, and those limits become increasingly apparent as sleep deprivation continues. The compensatory mechanisms that allow short-term survival without sleep begin to fail. The emergency systems that maintain basic function during crisis become exhausted. The body's remarkable ability to adapt reaches its breaking point. The scientific study of sleep and sleep deprivation has revealed that sleep is not merely beneficial or important for human health and well-being. It is as essential as breathing, eating, or maintaining proper body temperature. The biological imperative for sleep is so strong that it has been preserved across virtually all animal species, despite the apparent vulnerability that comes with unconsciousness. This universal need for sleep across the animal kingdom suggests that the benefits of sleep are so fundamental to life that they outweigh even the significant risks of being unconscious and vulnerable to predators or environmental dangers. Evolution has maintained sleep because life simply cannot be sustained without it. The modern world, with its artificial lighting, electronic devices, and 24-hour schedules, often treats sleep as an inconvenience or obstacle to productivity. But our growing understanding of sleep's essential functions reveals this perspective as profoundly misguided. Sleep is not time lost, but time invested in our most crucial maintenance and restoration. The hours we spend sleeping are among the most productive and important hours of our lives, even though we are not consciously aware of the intricate processes unfolding within us. During sleep, our brains consolidate memories, clear toxic waste products, and process emotional experiences. Our bodies repair tissues, strengthen immune defenses, and restore the delicate balance of hormones and other regulatory molecules. The quality of our sleep directly affects the quality of our waking lives in ways that extend far beyond simple alertness or energy levels. Good sleep enhances creativity, problem-solving ability, emotional regulation, social skills, and physical performance. It strengthens our resistance to illness, supports healthy aging, and may even extend our lifespan. Conversely, chronic sleep deprivation, even in less extreme forms than the cases we have discussed, carries serious health consequences. Regular sleep loss increases the risk of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity, depression, anxiety, and neurodegenerative conditions. It impairs immune function, accelerates aging, and reduces both the quality and quantity of life. Understanding these connections helps us appreciate that prioritizing good sleep is not selfish or lazy, but rather one of the most important investments we can make in our health, well-being, and ability to contribute positively to the world around us. When we sleep well, we are better partners, parents, friends, and members of our communities. The gentle drowsiness that signals the approach of bedtime is not a sign of weakness or failure, but rather our body's wisdom, calling us toward one of the most essential activities we can engage in. This daily transition from wakefulness to sleep connects us to rhythms that are older than human civilization, patterns of rest and activity that have sustained life on Earth for countless millions of years. As we prepare for sleep each evening, we can find comfort in knowing that we are about to engage in one of nature's most sophisticated and beneficial processes. The darkness that surrounds sleep is not empty, but full of healing activity. Our brains will process the day's experiences. Our immune systems will strengthen their defenses. Our bodies will repair themselves, and our minds will integrate new learning through the mysterious and essential process of dreaming. The dreams that come during REM sleep serve purposes that scientists are still discovering, but we know they play crucial roles in emotional processing, creative problem-solving, and memory consolidation. Even the sometimes strange or nonsensical content of dreams reflects important neural processes that help maintain psychological health and cognitive function. In our sleep, we become part of a process that is both deeply personal and universally shared. Around the world, billions of people surrender each night to the same biological imperative, trusting in systems that have sustained human life for millennia. We participate in a rhythm so fundamental that it connects us not only to our own species, but to the broader patterns of life on Earth. The tides, the seasons, the rotation of our planet, all follow cyclical patterns that echo the rhythm of sleep and wakefulness. In responding to our body's call for sleep, we align ourselves with forces that are cosmic in their scope and intimacy. We acknowledge that we are part of something much larger than our individual consciousness. Participants in the grand dance of life itself, sleep teaches us lessons that extend beyond biology into philosophy and spirituality. It reminds us that control is limited, that surrender can be healing, and that some of life's most important work happens when we stop trying to direct outcomes through conscious effort. In sleep, we practice a kind of faith, trusting that our bodies know how to heal and restore themselves without our conscious intervention. The vulnerability that comes with sleep, the hours of unconsciousness that might seem like lost time, actually represent some of our most protected and nurturing moments. During sleep, we are cradled by biological processes that have been refined over millions of years of evolution, held safe by systems that prioritize our restoration and renewal above all else. The peace that comes with good sleep extends far beyond the immediate refreshment we feel upon waking. Quality sleep creates a foundation for resilience, creativity, and joy that influences every aspect of our waking lives. It provides the neural and physiological resources we need to meet challenges with equanimity, to find beauty in ordinary moments, and to maintain hope even during difficult times. As we consider the profound consequences of never sleeping, we are led inevitably to a deep appreciation for the gift of rest that is available to us each night. The gentle pull towards sleep that we feel as evening approaches is not an inconvenience to be resisted, but an invitation to healing that deserves our gratitude and respect. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, you can rest peacefully, knowing that you are about to engage in one of the most important and life-sustaining activities possible. The drowsiness that settles over you is your body's way of preparing for a symphony of restoration that will touch every cell, every organ, every system within you. As your breathing deepens and your thoughts begin to slow, your body is shifting into a mode of profound healing and renewal. The stress hormones that have carried you through the day will decrease, allowing your nervous system to shift from alertness to restoration. Your heart rate will slow, giving your cardiovascular system the rest it needs to repair and strengthen itself. Your brain will begin the intricate process of memory consolidation, weaving the day's experiences into the fabric of your long-term memory and discarding information that is no longer needed. The glymphatic system will increase its activity, washing away the toxic proteins that accumulate during waking hours and leaving your brain clean and refreshed for tomorrow's challenges. Your immune system will shift into high gear, producing the infection-fighting cells and antibodies that protect you from illness. Growth hormone will pulse through your system, supporting the repair of tissues throughout your body and maintaining the cellular processes that keep you healthy and strong. In the gentle darkness of your bedroom, surrounded by the quiet sounds of night, you can let go of the day's worries and trust in the profound wisdom of your own biology. The systems that sustain your life do not require your conscious attention or control. They unfold automatically, guided by genetic programs that have been tested and refined across countless generations. The muscles throughout your body will relax completely, releasing the tension that has accumulated during your waking hours. Your digestive system will continue its quiet work, processing nutrients and eliminating waste while your conscious mind rests. Your skin cells will repair themselves, your hair and nails will grow, and the countless microscopic processes that maintain your physical form will continue their essential work. Dreams may come, carrying you into landscapes of memory and imagination that serve purposes we are only beginning to understand. These nocturnal journeys are not random, but represent your brain's sophisticated method of processing emotions, solving problems, and integrating new experiences with existing knowledge. As you surrender to sleep, you join the eternal rhythm that has sustained human consciousness since our species first looked up at the stars. You participate in a process so fundamental that it connects you to every generation that has come before and everyone that will follow. In sleep, we are all united by the same biological imperative, the same need for restoration and renewal. The morning will come, as it always has, bringing with it the gift of renewed consciousness and restored vitality. You will wake refreshed, not just in body, but in mind and spirit, ready to engage with the world from a place of strength and clarity that only proper sleep can provide. Sleep is not an interruption to life, but rather its most essential foundation. It is not time stolen from productivity, but time invested in the very capacity for meaningful productivity. It is not a sign of weakness, but evidence of the profound wisdom that governs all living systems. Rest now, knowing that in choosing sleep, you honor the deepest needs of your own biology. Trust in the ancient processes that will unfold while you rest. Allow yourself to be carried by currents that have sustained life for millions of years. Currents that will carry you safely through the night toward the promise of tomorrow. In the gentle darkness that surrounds you, miracles are about to unfold. Your body knows exactly what to do. Your brain understands its essential tasks. And your spirit can find the peace that comes from aligning with nature's most fundamental rhythms. Sleep well, rest deeply, and wake renewed to the endless possibilities that each new day brings. The question of what happens if a person never sleeps finds its answer not in fear, but in profound appreciation for the gift we receive each night. Sleep is life's greatest mercy, biology's most elegant solution, and consciousness's most trusted guardian. In embracing sleep, we embrace life itself in all its mystery, beauty, and infinite capacity for renewal. Tonight, let sleep come naturally, knowing that you are supported by forces that have sustained countless generations before you and will continue long after. In the quiet sanctuary of your rest, you are held safe by the very foundations of existence itself. Sleep peacefully, dream gently, and trust in the profound wisdom of your own being. The profound changes we've explored represent only part of the story that unfolds when sleep becomes impossible. As we move deeper into this territory, we encounter transformations that occur so gradually they're almost imperceptible at first, like watching the slow shift of light across a room as evening approaches. When someone has been awake for 2 weeks, their body enters what researchers call a state of chronic physiological dysregulation. Every system that depends on the rhythmic cycling between wakefulness and sleep begins operating in a mode that was never intended to be sustained. The body becomes like a symphony orchestra trying to play a complex piece while missing half its musicians. The cellular processes throughout the body begin showing signs of what scientists describe as metabolic exhaustion. Deep within each cell, the mitochondria, those tiny powerhouses that generate energy for all biological functions, start struggling to maintain their normal output. These microscopic structures, which number in the hundreds or thousands within each cell, depend on the restoration cycles that occur during sleep to repair themselves and maintain their efficiency. Without adequate sleep, the mitochondria begin accumulating damage from the constant production of energy without sufficient time for repair. This cellular fatigue manifests as a gradual decrease in the efficiency of every biological process, from the beating of the heart to the firing of neurons in the brain. The DNA within our cells faces increasing challenges during extended wakefulness. Normal cellular function produces reactive oxygen species, molecules that can damage the genetic material within each cell. During sleep, sophisticated repair mechanisms work to identify and correct this damage, maintaining the integrity of our genetic code. Without sleep, this damage begins accumulating at a rate that outpaces the body's ability to repair it. This genetic stress doesn't cause immediate symptoms, but it represents a fundamental threat to cellular health that extends far beyond the immediate effects of tiredness. The accumulation of DNA damage affects the cell's ability to produce proteins correctly, regulate its own functions, and respond appropriately to signals from other cells. The blood itself begins changing during extended periods without sleep. The plasma, that liquid component that carries nutrients and waste products throughout the body, starts showing altered concentrations of hundreds of different molecules. Proteins that should be present in specific amounts become elevated or depleted. Metabolites that normally follow predictable patterns become chaotic and unpredictable. These changes in blood composition affect every organ and tissue in the body. The brain, which depends on a precisely regulated supply of glucose, oxygen, and other nutrients, begins receiving a mixture that doesn't match its evolved requirements. The heart must work harder to pump blood that has become less efficient at carrying oxygen and nutrients to the tissues that need them. The lymphatic system, that network of vessels and organs that helps maintain fluid balance and immune function throughout the body, begins showing signs of dysfunction during prolonged wakefulness. This system, which operates most efficiently during the muscle relaxation and reduced movement of sleep, struggles to maintain its normal drainage and filtration functions. Fluid begins accumulating in tissues where it shouldn't, while areas that depend on lymphatic drainage become congested and inflamed. This lymphatic dysfunction contributes to the swelling, inflammation, and immune problems that develop during extended sleep deprivation. The nervous system itself undergoes profound changes as wakefulness extends beyond normal limits. The myelin sheaths that insulate nerve fibers and allow rapid transmission of electrical signals begin showing signs of deterioration. These fatty coverings, which are maintained and repaired during sleep, start breaking down when deprived of their normal restoration periods. This myelin degradation slows the transmission of nerve signals throughout the body, affecting everything from reflexes to complex cognitive processes. The brain's ability to coordinate its own functions becomes increasingly compromised as the communication networks within neural tissue become less efficient. The neurotransmitter systems that regulate mood, attention, and consciousness face mounting challenges during extended wakefulness. The delicate balance between excitatory and inhibitory signals that normally maintain stable brain function becomes increasingly chaotic. Neurons that should fire in coordinated patterns begin operating more randomly, creating the neural chaos that underlies the psychological symptoms of severe sleep deprivation. Dopamine, that crucial neurotransmitter involved in motivation, pleasure, and motor control, becomes severely dysregulated without sleep. The neurons that produce dopamine begin showing signs of stress and dysfunction, leading to problems with movement coordination, emotional regulation, and the ability to experience pleasure or satisfaction. Serotonin, which plays essential roles in mood regulation, impulse control, and sleep itself, becomes increasingly depleted during extended wakefulness. This depletion creates a vicious cycle where the lack of sleep makes it even more difficult to achieve the brain states necessary for restorative rest. The GABA system, which normally provides the inhibitory signals that allow the brain to quiet itself for sleep, becomes overwhelmed and exhausted. These neurons, which should be able to slow down brain activity when rest is needed, lose their ability to overcome the hyperactivation that develops during prolonged wakefulness. As someone approaches their third week without adequate sleep, if such extended wakefulness were somehow possible to maintain, the boundaries between different states of consciousness begin dissolving in ways that challenge our basic understanding of awareness itself. The brain may cycle unpredictably between states that resemble wakefulness, light sleep, deep sleep, and REM dreaming, sometimes within the span of minutes or even seconds. These rapid transitions between consciousness states create a surreal experience where reality and dreams blend seamlessly. The person might respond to questions about events that are happening only in their internal experience, or fail to notice actual events occurring in their environment because their attention is focused on internally generated experiences. The visual system undergoes particularly dramatic changes during this period. The occipital cortex, that region at the back of the brain responsible for processing visual information, begins generating increasingly complex hallucinations that can involve entire scenes playing out with movie-like clarity and detail. These visual experiences often involve familiar people and places, but arranged in impossible or nonsensical combinations. Someone might see their childhood home populated by current colleagues, or observe conversations between people who have never met. These hallucinations feel completely real because they're generated by the same neural networks that process actual visual information. The auditory system creates equally compelling phantom experiences. The temporal lobe regions, responsible for processing sound, begin generating elaborate auditory landscapes that can include music, conversations, environmental sounds, and voices. These sounds often seem to come from specific locations in space and may carry emotional significance that feels profound and meaningful. What makes these hallucinations particularly challenging is their integration with memory systems. The hippocampus, already struggling with the overwhelming task of processing information without adequate consolidation time, begins incorporating these hallucinated experiences into memory, as if they were real events. This creates a situation where the person's understanding of recent history becomes increasingly corrupted by experiences that never actually occurred. They might remember having detailed conversations with people they haven't seen, visiting places they haven't been, or participating in events that exist only in their sleep-deprived consciousness. The prefrontal cortex, that sophisticated region responsible for reality testing and executive judgment, becomes increasingly unable to distinguish between these internally generated experiences and actual sensory input. The normal mechanisms that help us recognize when something doesn't make sense or couldn't have happened become overwhelmed and dysfunctional. This breakdown in reality testing creates a state that resembles certain psychiatric conditions, but with an important difference. The hallucinations and delusions that develop during sleep deprivation are caused by specific, identifiable changes in brain function that result directly from the lack of restorative sleep. They represent the brain's desperate attempt to achieve some form of the processing that normally occurs during REM sleep. The social implications of these perceptual changes become increasingly serious, as the sleep-deprived person may respond to situations and people that exist only in their altered consciousness. They might become angry at family members for things that happened only in hallucinated interactions, or make plans based on conversations that never actually occurred. The speech centers in the brain begin showing signs of dysfunction that affect both the production and comprehension of language. The complex neural networks in the left hemisphere that normally coordinate the rapid, precise movements required for speech become less coordinated and efficient. Words might be pronounced incorrectly or replaced with similar sounding but inappropriate alternatives. The grammar and syntax that normally organize thoughts into coherent sentences may become jumbled and confused. The person might start sentences without being able to remember what they intended to say, or continue talking long after they've lost track of their original point. Understanding the speech of others becomes equally challenging as the auditory processing centers struggle to decode the rapid stream of sounds that make up human language. Conversations may seem to occur in slow motion or at impossible speed. Simple questions might require several repetitions before they can be understood and processed. The motor cortex and cerebellum, those regions responsible for coordinating movement and maintaining balance, face increasing difficulties as sleep deprivation continues. The precise timing and coordination required for smooth movement begins breaking down, leading to clumsiness, tremors, and problems with balance that increase the risk of falls and injuries. Fine motor skills like writing, typing, or manipulating small objects become increasingly difficult as the neural control of hand and finger movements becomes less precise. The person might find themselves dropping things frequently, or having trouble with tasks that normally require no conscious thought. The cardiovascular system, having operated under constant stress for weeks without the restorative periods that normally occur during sleep, begins showing signs of serious dysfunction. The heart muscle itself may develop irregular rhythms as the electrical conduction system becomes affected by the chronic stress and hormonal imbalances of sleep deprivation. Blood pressure regulation becomes increasingly erratic, with dangerous swings between hypertension and hypertension that can affect blood flow to vital organs. The blood vessels throughout the body lose their normal ability to adjust their diameter in response to changing needs, compromising circulation to tissues that depend on precise blood flow regulation. The kidneys, working continuously to filter an increasingly complex mixture of toxins and waste products, may begin showing signs of decreased function. The delicate filtering structures within the kidneys can become damaged by the chronic inflammation and altered blood chemistry that develops during extended sleep deprivation. Electrolyte imbalances become more severe and unpredictable, affecting the function of every cell in the body. Sodium, potassium, calcium, and other essential minerals that must be maintained within narrow ranges for proper cellular function begin fluctuating in dangerous patterns. The respiratory system faces mounting challenges as the muscles responsible for breathing become fatigued and the brain's control of breathing patterns becomes less precise. The normal automatic regulation of breathing that maintains proper oxygen and carbon dioxide levels may become compromised, leading to periods of inadequate oxygenation. The diaphragm and other breathing muscles, having worked continuously without the relaxation that occurs during sleep, may begin showing signs of fatigue and reduced efficiency. This can lead to shallow, rapid breathing that doesn't adequately ventilate the lungs or maintain proper blood gas levels. During this extended period, the immune system's dysfunction becomes so severe that even minor exposures to common pathogens can lead to serious infections. The bone marrow's production of new immune cells drops to critically low levels, while existing immune cells become increasingly ineffective at recognizing and responding to threats. The inflammatory response becomes so dysregulated that it may begin attacking the body's own tissues, creating autoimmune-like reactions that can damage organs and systems throughout the body. This chronic inflammation accelerates aging processes and increases the risk of cardiovascular disease, neurological problems, and other serious health complications. The skin, that remarkable organ that serves as our first defense against the external world, begins showing visible signs of the internal stress. Healing slows dramatically, making even minor cuts and scrapes take much longer to resolve properly. The skin may develop a pale, sallow appearance as circulation becomes compromised and cellular repair processes slow down. Hair and nail growth may slow or become irregular as the body redirects resources away from these non-essential functions toward more critical survival needs. The normal shedding and replacement of skin cells becomes disrupted, leading to changes in texture and appearance that reflect the internal state of cellular exhaustion. The endocrine system's dysfunction reaches critical levels during extended sleep deprivation. The intricate network of hormone-producing glands that normally coordinate metabolism, growth, reproduction, and stress responses becomes so chaotic that it can no longer maintain the chemical balance necessary for normal physiological function. Insulin resistance becomes so severe that even healthy individuals may develop dangerously high blood sugar levels. The pancreas, working overtime to produce enough insulin to overcome this resistance, may begin showing signs of exhaustion and reduced function. The thyroid gland may virtually shut down its production of hormones that regulate metabolic rate, leading to a dramatic slowing of cellular processes throughout the body. This metabolic slowdown represents the body's attempt to conserve energy, but it comes at the cost of reduced function in every organ system. The adrenal glands, having produced stress hormones at maximum levels for weeks, may become completely exhausted and unable to respond to additional challenges. This adrenal failure can lead to dangerous drops in blood pressure and the inability to respond appropriately to stress or emergencies. Growth hormone production, which normally occurs in pulses during deep sleep, becomes virtually non-existent during extended wakefulness. This absence of growth hormone severely impairs the body's ability to repair tissues, maintain bone density, and support healthy cellular function. The reproductive system essentially shuts down during severe sleep deprivation, as the body prioritizes immediate survival over long-term reproductive capacity. Sex hormone production drops to minimal levels, affecting not just reproductive function, but also bone health, muscle mass, and overall energy levels. The brain's waste clearance system, the glymphatic network that normally operates at peak efficiency during sleep, becomes so overwhelmed that toxic proteins begin accumulating to dangerous levels throughout neural tissue. These protein deposits, which include substances associated with neurodegenerative diseases, begin interfering with normal neuronal function. The blood-brain barrier, that crucial defense system that protects neural tissue from harmful substances in the bloodstream, may begin breaking down under the chronic stress of sleep deprivation. This breakdown allows inflammatory molecules, toxins, and other harmful substances to enter brain tissue, where they can cause additional damage to neural networks. The cerebrospinal fluid that bathes the brain and spinal cord becomes less effective at providing nutrients and removing waste products. The normal circulation and turnover of this protective fluid slows significantly, leaving neural tissue vulnerable to the accumulation of harmful substances. As we observe these profound changes that occur during weeks of sleep deprivation, we begin to understand why the human body simply cannot sustain indefinite wakefulness. Every system that depends on the restoration and repair that occurs during sleep eventually reaches a point where it can no longer maintain basic function. The progression we see in documented cases of extreme sleep deprivation, whether voluntary like Randy Gardner's experiment or involuntary like fatal familial insomnia, all point toward the same inevitable conclusion. Without the comprehensive restoration that sleep provides, the human body enters a state of progressive failure that ultimately becomes incompatible with life. The remarkable aspect of this progression is not how quickly it occurs, but how the body continues fighting for survival, even under these impossible circumstances. Every compensatory mechanism, every emergency system, every backup process the body possesses is activated in an attempt to maintain basic function without sleep. The brain's creation of hallucinations represents its desperate attempt to achieve some form of dream processing while awake. The cardiovascular system's continued function, despite chronic stress, demonstrates the incredible resilience of the heart and blood vessels. The immune system's ongoing efforts to fight infections despite severe impairment show the body's unwavering commitment to survival. Yet these heroic efforts have absolute limits. The compensatory mechanisms eventually become exhausted. The emergency systems begin failing. The backup processes become overwhelmed. Without the restoration that only sleep can provide, the body's remarkable resilience eventually reaches its breaking point. The scientific study of sleep deprivation has revealed that sleep is not merely beneficial or important for human health and functioning. It is as essential as breathing, eating, or maintaining proper body temperature. Sleep represents one of evolution's most sophisticated and essential solutions to the challenge of maintaining complex multicellular life. The fact that virtually every animal species engages in some form of sleep, despite the apparent vulnerability that comes with unconsciousness, demonstrates just how fundamental these restorative processes are to life itself. Evolution has preserved sleep because the benefits it provides are so essential that life simply cannot be sustained without them. The progressive breakdown that occurs without sleep illuminates the incredible sophistication of normal sleep architecture. The different stages of sleep, the precise timing of hormone releases, the activation of waste clearance systems, the consolidation of memories, all represent biological processes that have been refined over millions of years of evolution. This understanding helps us appreciate that the gentle drowsiness we feel each evening is not a sign of weakness or inefficiency, but rather our body's wisdom calling us toward one of the most important activities we can engage in. Sleep represents time invested in the very foundations of health, consciousness, and survival itself. The modern world often treats sleep as an obstacle to productivity or an inconvenience to be minimized. But our growing scientific understanding reveals this perspective as profoundly misguided. Sleep is not time lost, but time dedicated to the most essential maintenance and restoration our bodies require. The hours we spend sleeping are among the most productive and important hours of our lives, even though we are not consciously aware of the intricate processes unfolding within us. During sleep, miracles of restoration occur at the cellular level that prepare us not just for the next day, but for a lifetime of healthy function. Quality sleep affects every aspect of our waking lives in ways that extend far beyond simple alertness or energy levels. Good sleep enhances creativity, emotional regulation, immune function, cardiovascular health, and cognitive performance. It supports healthy aging, may extend lifespan, and provides the foundation for resilience in facing life's challenges. The gentle pull towards sleep that we feel as evening approaches connects us to rhythms that are older than human civilization. In responding to our body's call for rest, we participate in patterns that have sustained life on Earth for countless millions of years. We align ourselves with cycles that are both deeply personal and universally shared. As we prepare for sleep each evening, we can find profound comfort in knowing that we are about to engage in one of nature's most sophisticated and beneficial processes. The darkness that surrounds sleep is not empty, but rich with healing activity that will touch every cell, every organ, every system within us. Our brains will process the day's experiences, consolidating important memories and discarding information that is no longer needed. The glymphatic system will increase its activity, washing away toxic proteins and metabolic waste that have accumulated during our waking hours. Our immune systems will strengthen their defenses, producing the cells and antibodies that protect us from illness. Growth hormone will pulse through our systems, supporting the repair of tissues throughout our bodies and maintaining the cellular processes that keep us healthy and strong. Our cardiovascular systems will shift into their restorative mode, allowing our hearts and blood vessels the rest they need to repair and strengthen themselves for tomorrow's challenges. The neurotransmitter systems that regulate our moods and thoughts will rebalance themselves, preparing the delicate chemical orchestration that makes consciousness and emotional well-being possible. Our hormonal systems will reset their daily rhythms, ensuring the precise timing of chemical signals that coordinate every aspect of our physiology. Dreams may come, carrying us into landscapes of memory and imagination that serve purposes we are only beginning to understand. These nocturnal journeys represent our brain's sophisticated method of processing emotions, integrating new experiences, and maintaining the psychological balance that allows us to face each new day with clarity and resilience. In the quiet sanctuary of our bedrooms, surrounded by the gentle sounds of night, we can let go of the day's concerns and trust in the profound wisdom of our own biology. The systems that sustain our lives unfold automatically, guided by genetic programs that have been tested and refined across countless generations of human experience. Sleep teaches us lessons that extend beyond biology into the realm of wisdom itself. It reminds us that control has limits, that surrender can be healing, and that some of life's most important work happens when we stop trying to direct outcomes through conscious effort. In sleep, we practice a kind of trust, allowing our bodies to carry out their essential work without our oversight or interference. The vulnerability that comes with unconsciousness, the hours when we cannot protect ourselves through conscious awareness, actually represent some of our most protected and nurtured moments. During sleep, we are held safe by biological processes that prioritize our restoration and renewal above all else, systems that have evolved specifically to guard and heal us while we rest. The peace that comes with quality sleep creates a foundation for everything we hope to accomplish and experience during our waking hours. It provides the neural and physiological resources we need to meet challenges with equanimity, to find joy in ordinary moments, and to maintain hope and resilience even during difficult times. As you settle into your own rest tonight, you can find deep comfort in knowing that sleep is not just a pleasant escape from daily activities, but rather an essential biological process that keeps you healthy, alert, and truly alive. Each moment of sleep represents a gift to your future self, an investment in your physical health, mental clarity, and emotional well-being. The drowsiness that settles over you is your body's gentle way of preparing for a symphony of restoration that will unfold while you rest peacefully. Your breathing will deepen and slow, your heart rate will decrease, and your entire system will shift into the restorative mode that makes tomorrow's vitality possible. In the gentle darkness that surrounds you, trust in processes that are older than conscious thought itself. Allow yourself to be carried by currents that have sustained countless generations before you and will continue long after. Rest peacefully, knowing that in choosing sleep, you honor the deepest wisdom of life itself. The question of what happens if a person never sleeps finds its answer not in fear, but in profound appreciation for the gift we receive each night. Sleep represents life's greatest mercy, biology's most elegant solution to the challenges of maintaining consciousness, and evolution's most protective gift to complex life forms. Tonight, let sleep come naturally and completely, knowing that you are supported by forces that represent millions of years of evolutionary wisdom. In the quiet sanctuary of your rest, you are held safe by the very foundations of existence itself. Sleep well, dream gently, and wake refreshed to embrace whatever tomorrow may bring. Tomorrow may bring. As we venture deeper into the territory of prolonged wakefulness, we encounter changes that unfold with the quiet persistence of shadows lengthening at dusk. The human body, remarkable in its resilience, continues its valiant struggle to maintain the delicate balance of life, even as the very foundation of that balance slowly erodes beneath it. When someone has remained awake for 3 weeks, if such extended wakefulness could somehow be sustained, we witness transformations that occur at the most fundamental levels of biological existence. The cells throughout the body, those microscopic units of life that normally cycle through periods of activity and rest in harmony with our sleep-wake patterns, begin operating in a state that was never intended to be permanent. Deep within each cell, the mitochondria face an increasingly impossible task. These tiny powerhouses, which generate the energy required for every biological process, depend on the restoration cycles that occur during sleep to maintain their own health and efficiency. Without adequate rest, these cellular engines begin accumulating damage from the constant production of energy without sufficient time for repair. This mitochondrial exhaustion manifests as a gradual decrease in the efficiency of every biological process. The heart beats with less vigor, neurons fire with less precision, and the countless chemical reactions that sustain life proceed with diminishing effectiveness. It's as if the very spark of life itself begins to dim, not suddenly, but with the slow inevitability of a candle burning toward its end. The genetic material within our cells tells a similar story of gradual deterioration. Our DNA, that remarkable blueprint that guides every aspect of cellular function, faces constant challenges from the normal processes of metabolism. During sleep, sophisticated repair mechanisms work tirelessly to identify and correct damage to our genetic code, maintaining the integrity that allows cells to function properly. Without sleep, this damage begins accumulating at a rate that outpaces the body's ability to repair it. The consequences aren't immediately visible, but they represent a fundamental threat to cellular health that extends far beyond the immediate symptoms of tiredness. Each cell becomes less able to produce the proteins it needs, less capable of regulating its own functions, and less responsive to the signals that coordinate the symphony of biological activity throughout the body. The blood itself undergoes subtle but profound changes during extended periods without sleep. This remarkable fluid, which carries life-sustaining nutrients and oxygen to every corner of our bodies, begins showing alterations in the concentrations of hundreds of different molecules. Proteins that should be present in precise amounts become elevated or depleted, creating an internal environment that no longer matches the conditions our organs evolved to expect. These changes in blood composition create cascading effects throughout every system. The brain, which depends on a carefully regulated supply of glucose and oxygen, must adapt to receiving nutrients in concentrations that don't match its refined requirements. The heart works harder to pump blood that has become less efficient at its essential tasks of nourishment and waste removal. The lymphatic system, that often overlooked network of vessels and organs that helps maintain fluid balance and supports immune function, begins showing signs of dysfunction during prolonged wakefulness. This system operates most efficiently during the muscle relaxation and reduced movement that characterize sleep, struggling to maintain its normal drainage and filtration functions without adequate rest. Fluid begins accumulating in tissues where it doesn't belong, while areas that depend on lymphatic drainage become congested and inflamed. This dysfunction contributes to the swelling and immune problems that develop during extended sleep deprivation, creating additional burdens for a body already operating under tremendous stress. The nervous system itself undergoes changes that affect the very infrastructure of communication within our bodies. The myelin sheaths that insulate nerve fibers, allowing rapid transmission of electrical signals between the brain and every part of the body, begin showing signs of deterioration when deprived of the maintenance that occurs during sleep. This breakdown in neural insulation slows the transmission of nerve signals throughout the body, affecting everything from simple reflexes to the complex cognitive processes that define human consciousness. The brain's ability to coordinate its own functions becomes increasingly compromised as the communication networks within neural tissue become less efficient and reliable. The neurotransmitter systems that regulate our moods, thoughts, and perceptions face mounting challenges during extended wakefulness. The delicate balance between excitatory and inhibitory signals that normally maintain stable brain function becomes increasingly chaotic and unpredictable. Neurons that should fire in coordinated patterns begin operating more randomly, creating the neural disorder that underlies the psychological symptoms of severe sleep deprivation. Dopamine, that crucial chemical messenger involved in motivation, pleasure, and movement control, becomes severely dysregulated without adequate sleep. The neurons that produce this essential neurotransmitter begin showing signs of stress and dysfunction, leading to problems with coordination, emotional regulation, and the basic ability to experience satisfaction or joy in daily experiences. Serotonin, which plays vital roles in mood regulation, impulse control, and the sleep process itself, becomes increasingly depleted during extended wakefulness. This creates a particularly cruel cycle where the lack of sleep makes it even more difficult to achieve the brain states necessary for restorative rest, trapping the individual in a spiral of increasing exhaustion and dysfunction. The GABA system, which normally provides the inhibitory signals that allow the brain to quiet itself for sleep, becomes overwhelmed and exhausted. These specialized neurons, which should be able to slow down brain activity when rest is needed, lose their ability to overcome the hyperactivation that develops during prolonged wakefulness. As someone approaches their 4th week without adequate sleep, the boundaries between different states of consciousness begin dissolving in ways that challenge our fundamental understanding of awareness itself. The brain may cycle unpredictably between states that resemble wakefulness, light sleep, deep sleep, and dreaming, sometimes transitioning between these states within minutes or even seconds. These rapid shifts between consciousness states create a surreal experience where the distinction between internal mental experiences and external reality becomes increasingly meaningless. The person might respond to questions about events that exist only in their internal experience, or fail to notice actual events occurring around them because their attention has become focused entirely on internally generated experiences. The visual system undergoes particularly dramatic transformations during this period. The occipital cortex, that sophisticated region at the back of the brain responsible for processing visual information, begins generating increasingly complex and detailed hallucinations that can involve entire scenes playing out with remarkable clarity and apparent reality. These visual experiences often involve familiar people and places, but arranged in combinations that follow dream logic rather than the rules of waking reality. Someone might see their childhood bedroom populated by current colleagues, or observe detailed conversations between people who exist in different periods of their life. These hallucinations feel completely authentic because they're generated by the same neural networks that process actual visual information. The auditory system creates equally compelling phantom experiences during this phase of sleep deprivation. The temporal lobe regions, responsible for processing sound, begin generating elaborate auditory landscapes that can include music, conversations, environmental sounds, and voices that seem to come from specific locations in space and carry profound emotional significance. What makes these hallucinations particularly challenging is their integration with the brain's memory systems. The hippocampus, already overwhelmed by the task of processing information without adequate consolidation time, begins incorporating these hallucinated experiences into memory as if they were actual events that occurred in the external world. This creates a situation where the person's understanding of recent history becomes increasingly corrupted by experiences that never actually occurred. They might remember having detailed conversations with people they haven't seen, visiting places they haven't been to, or participating in events that exist only in their sleep-deprived consciousness. The prefrontal cortex, that sophisticated region responsible for reality testing and executive judgment, becomes increasingly unable to distinguish between these internally generated experiences and actual sensory input from the environment. The normal mechanisms that help us recognize when something doesn't make logical sense or couldn't have happened in reality become overwhelmed and dysfunctional. This breakdown in reality testing creates a state that superficially resembles certain psychiatric conditions, but with an important distinction. The hallucinations and altered perceptions that develop during sleep deprivation result from specific, identifiable changes in brain function that stem directly from the absence of restorative sleep. They represent the brain's increasingly desperate attempt to achieve some form of the processing that normally occurs during REM sleep. The social implications of these perceptual changes become increasingly serious, as the sleep-deprived person may respond to situations and people that exist only in their altered state of consciousness. They might become upset with family members for things that happened only in hallucinated interactions, or make important decisions based on conversations that never actually took place. The speech centers in the brain begin showing signs of dysfunction that affect both the production and comprehension of language. The complex neural networks in the left hemisphere that normally coordinate the rapid, precise movements required for clear speech become less coordinated and efficient with each passing day. Words might be mispronounced or replaced with similar sounding but contextually inappropriate alternatives. The grammar and syntax that normally organize thoughts into coherent sentences may become jumbled and confused. The person might begin sentences without being able to remember what they intended to communicate, or continue talking long after they've lost track of their original thought. Understanding the speech of others becomes equally challenging as the auditory processing centers struggle to decode the rapid stream of sounds that make up human language. Conversations may seem to occur in slow motion or at impossible speed. Simple questions might require multiple repetitions before they can be understood and processed appropriately. The motor cortex and cerebellum, those regions responsible for coordinating movement and maintaining balance, face increasing difficulties as sleep deprivation continues into its fourth week. The precise timing and coordination required for smooth, controlled movement begins breaking down systematically, leading to clumsiness, involuntary tremors, and problems with balance that significantly increase the risk of falls and injuries. Fine motor skills like writing, typing, or manipulating small objects become increasingly difficult as the neural control of hand and finger movements becomes less precise and reliable. The person might find themselves dropping things frequently or struggling with tasks that normally require no conscious thought or effort. The cardiovascular system, having operated under constant stress for nearly a month without the restorative periods that normally occur during sleep, begins showing signs of serious and potentially dangerous dysfunction. The heart muscle itself may develop irregular rhythms as the electrical conduction system becomes affected by the chronic stress and severe hormonal imbalances of extended sleep deprivation. Blood pressure regulation becomes increasingly erratic and unpredictable, with potentially dangerous swings between dangerously high pressure and inadequately low pressure that can compromise blood flow to vital organs throughout the body. The blood vessels lose their normal ability to adjust their diameter appropriately in response to changing physiological needs. The kidneys, working continuously to filter an increasingly complex mixture of toxins, waste products, and abnormal protein concentrations, may begin showing measurable signs of decreased function. The delicate filtering structures within these vital organs can become damaged by the chronic inflammation and altered blood chemistry that develops during extended sleep deprivation. Electrolyte imbalances become more severe and unpredictable with each passing day, affecting the function of every single cell in the body. Sodium, potassium, calcium, and other essential minerals that must be maintained within very narrow ranges for proper cellular function begin fluctuating in patterns that can become life-threatening. As we reach the end of our exploration into the profound question of what happens when sleep disappears from human life, we find ourselves not with fear, but with deep reverence for one of nature's most essential gifts. Through the gentle lens of medical science, we have witnessed how the human body responds when deprived of its most fundamental rhythm, and in doing so, we have come to understand just how precious and protective sleep truly is. The progressive changes we have observed, from the subtle shifts that begin within the first 24 hours to the profound transformations that unfold over weeks, all point to the same beautiful truth. Sleep is not a weakness or an interruption to our lives. It is life's most essential foundation, a sacred pause that allows every cell, every organ, every system within us to heal, restore, and prepare for the gift of another day. The documented cases of sleep deprivation, whether voluntary like Randy Gardner's brave experiment, or involuntary like the tragic progression of fatal familial insomnia, serve not as cautionary tales, but as profound reminders of our body's wisdom. Even when pushed to its absolute limits, the human organism continues to fight for restoration, creating microsleeps, generating compensatory mechanisms, and desperately seeking the renewal that only sleep can provide. In understanding the consequences of sleeplessness, we come to appreciate the miraculous processes that unfold each night as we rest. The glymphatic system washing toxins from our brains, our immune systems strengthening their defenses, our hearts finding their restorative rhythm, our minds weaving the day's experiences into the tapestry of memory. These are not merely biological functions, but acts of profound self-care, orchestrated by the wisdom of millions of years of evolution. The gentle drowsiness that calls to us each evening is not an inconvenience, but an invitation to healing. The hours we spend in sleep are not lost time, but the most productive investment we can make in our health, our consciousness, and our capacity for joy. In surrendering to sleep, we trust in processes older than human civilization itself, patterns of rest and renewal that connect us to the deepest rhythms of life on Earth. Tonight, as you prepare for your own journey into sleep, carry with you the understanding that you are about to engage in one of the most important and protective activities possible. Let the knowledge of sleep's profound necessity fill you not with anxiety, but with gratitude. Rest peacefully, knowing that in choosing sleep, you honor the ancient wisdom of your own biology and participate in the gentle miracle that sustains all conscious life. Sleep is not the absence of living but life's most essential rhythm, a tender mercy that holds us safe through the darkness and delivers us renewed to the light of each new day.